Hey guys, Tim here with Redwing RC again, and Heather and I gave you a nice introduction to each of these units to kind of give you an idea of the differences and what each price point gets you. So you can look for that video and kind of see the overview. But this today is to give you an idea of how to set these up. So each of these units is a little bit different. The red unit is a direct voltage, so whatever you hook up to your batteries, whatever voltage your batteries are, is what your servos are going to get. Your receiver will get 5 volts. And that's the same for the red one, yellow, and black. So all these, your receiver is going to get an even, consistent 5 volts. The yellow one, you've got adjustable voltage to your servos. And then the black one, you have adjustable voltage as well, and battery sharing as a draw. So I should say battery balancing. So all of these share, but this one balances very precisely. All right, guys, I'm going to use the yellow unit to show you how to set these up because it has all the features available to any of the units. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in the battery, and right away you're going to see that the LCD lights up and shows you that the battery in has 7.65 volts because we got a 2-cell LiPo. The servos are getting 6 volts, which is adjustable here with the little screwdriver. I'll show you that in a second. The receiver is getting 5 volts kicking out from these leads here. So your receiver will be supplied power from these 2 leads here. The rest of these are signal only. They only need signal. And then your CDI battery right now is getting 6 volts because what I've done is I've jumped this from one of my open servo bays that I'm not using theoretically and running that down to the CDI in right here. So with the yellow unit, whatever you set your servo voltage at is what your ignition is going to get. Same thing if you jump it from the red unit. However, remember with the red unit, it's direct voltage. So if you put in a 7.4 volt battery and you're running 7.4 volt servos, that's fine, but your ignition will be getting 7.4 volts, which is a little too high. So you'd have to use an inline regulator, between coming off the board and going back in. The advantage of jumping from the board itself is that you don't have a third battery, so all your power is coming from those 2 batteries and is shared. So should one fail, you've got power at all times. So again, I had just mentioned that the servo voltage here on the yellow unit and the black unit both can be adjusted with this little screw on the side. And the screw is actually a little dial, so it never really tightens or loosens. It just spins. And so you can see as I turn this here, it's raising at 6.5. And it's peaking out at about 6.5 on this one. The reason is that it automatically is dropping the voltage from these a little bit. So if you use an 11.1 volt battery, then the max voltage you're going to get out of it is 9.6. The output range on the yellow unit here is 4.8 volts to 9.7. So with the 2-cell LiPo, you can turn this all the way down to 4.8, or you can turn it up to a maximum, as we saw here, of 6.5, because it does automatically draw some voltage down. So I'll go ahead and turn this back down again, kind of show you how that starts to fall here. So there it goes. 5.9, 5.6, 5.4. And it's going to bottom out here in just a second. All right, 4.68, so just a little under the 4.8 that it shows. So that's how you would adjust it. You can use our 3-cell 9.9 volt batteries with this unit as well. And then your maximum voltage would be probably about 8.6 volts because it's going to knock it down a little bit. But you'd be able to adjust it from 4.8 to 4.8 to 8.6. So really this is made to probably kind of use a 3-cell LiPo so that you've got a full range of adjustment. Also, all 3 of these units come with alarms, both an audible and an LED alarm. They come with this little LED that you would plug in right here. And what would happen is if any of your voltages drop down below a safe level, for example, if your receiver battery went out, I'll simulate that by pulling this out of the ignition in. Then it would flash and let out that really annoying sound, indicating that there's a problem. And as you can see, that LED is really bright, so you don't even have to mount this like through the wood or anything. You can just tape this to the back of the covering, and it's so bright you definitely still see it. What's really cool on these is that all three of them feature this touch button programming. So if you press and hold the set button right here, about 2 seconds, and then you can hit it once to go back and forth between the in battery or the CDI battery, and then press and hold on the one that you want. So we're going to our ignition, and then if you press this, and it'll raise it just 1/10 of a volt at a time, and you can press and hold it to just run through. And you can set this anywhere from off to 4 volts to 12, and then as it gets up to 12, it'll go back to turning off. All right, so now it's off, and then if you just let it go, it'll go back to the previous screen. And so that's how you set your warnings for whatever voltage that you want it to indicate to you that there was a problem. Now, as mentioned before, with any of these units, if you have an open bay that you're not using one of these servos, since they all have dual bays, you can use one of these bottom bays, either bay really, and then you can jump the voltage from your servo output straight to your CDI, which eliminates having a third battery to fail. So you can do that on any of these. With any of them, it's going to be the same voltage that's obviously going out to your servos. So if you're running high voltage servos, you're going to have instead of plugging straight into here, you're probably going to take this, plug it into a regulator, and then plug that regulator back into here, just to be able to knock it down to the voltage that you need for your ignition. Okay, and then lastly, all of these units have an opto-kill built in, which is really cool. If you need to, for any reason, you can kill your plane from your radio. The way that works, really simple. You're going to hook up your receiver. I just have a little Park Flyer one for an example here. This last plug, all the way to the right of the box, that says CDI, and it's got 3 wires on it, so it's not just signal wire. And we're going to take this one, and we're going to run it to the gear channel, or whatever channel you want to, if you want to have an aux switch or something like that, but I'm going to hook it up to my gear channel on my receiver so that the gear switch on my radio activates it. So I'm going to go ahead and hook this up to the gear switch, and then I'm going to turn on my radio. And you first have to just connect the receiver, turn it on, and have it activate with the box before the opto-kill will work. So right now you can see that this light to the ignition is staying on, is not changing. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the power to the box, and you can leave the radio on or off. Once it recognizes it once, it's good to go. And I'm going to plug it back in, just kind of say, hey, it's connected. This is the receiver we're going to be working with. And you can see now it's got power, but our ignition is not on now until I flip the switch, and then it's on. So I'm going to do that one more time. We're going to go ahead and disconnect this, and then connect it back in. All right, and then you can see it's out right now, so when I flip it again, it's going to turn on. So another thing you should note about this is, it's going to, when it first turns on and activates, whatever position your switch is in is going to be off. So if you want your switch to be off when you flip it down, you need to start with it in the down position. So I'll show you here. I'm going to flip it. I'm basically going to turn mine down right now, which currently is showing on. I'm going to unplug it, and then plug it back in, and this time it'll activate as though that's the off position, which is what I want this time. So now when I flip it up, the light comes on, opto-kill is working properly. So all 3 of these units function the same way in that regard as well. So one last optional feature I wanted to show you is that we offer for sale on our cart these little LED lights with a JR plug. And what you can do with these is, as you can see on the power box here, this is the output to your ignition. So normally you'd run that straight to your ignition, and that would be what you'd use to power your ignition. But you could run a Y and then plug this in to one port on the Y, so that when you flip your ignition on, that lights up. So you can mount this on the outside of your plane, so you have a external cue, a visible cue to know that your ignition is activated or not. So again, you can see as I flip my gear switch off and on, that'll light up along with that. So again, to use that, you'd need to not only buy the LED, but you'd also need a Y, so you can run one of the outputs to your ignition and the other one to the LED just as a display. And so these LEDs, I think, run anywhere from like 3 volts to 12 volts, so anything you're outputting to them, they'll work on. So these boxes are really cool. As you can see, they got a lot of great features. The red one and the yellow one are good options for a 30 or 50 cc size. The black one you probably want to put in like 50 or 100. It is a little heavier. It's about 4.5 ounces. The red and yellow ones both weigh in about 3 ounces, so you get quite a bit more weight savings with the red and yellow units. But as you can see, great units, a lot of functionality. One last side note is that all 3 of them also come with a switch. Now the switch is it's a little misleading because it's not typical of your normal switch. It's built so that if, say, the wire was to fail or come loose, the unit would stay on. So by default right now you can see there's nothing plugged in to the little on-off switch in the center here, and the unit is on. Now what happens is, if I turn this switch to the off position and plug it in, then of course it should turn off, which it does. But again, simulating should there be a failure with the wire or connection somewhere, if you were to simulate that by pulling this out, the unit defaults to on. So should this switch fail, your unit stays on. It's essentially like a jumper, like a bind plug, which I can show you here. If you take a bind plug and put this in, and it turns off. So that's essentially what it's doing. So just to kind of give you a heads up, that switch is not a critical switch. It's kind of an optional way just to kill it. You probably do want to disconnect your batteries from this unit entirely when it's not being used, just because I think over time it could have a very low draw on the batteries. So if you're not going to be flying your plane for a while, you'd probably disconnect it. But these units are pretty awesome, as you can see. For the money, they've got a lot of really cool features. So if you have any questions, let us know, and hurry up and get to Redwing RC and buy one of these today.